The adjuster who approved my truck claim died in 2019. I didn't know that yet when the check cleared. What I knew was that the letter said R. Ostheimer, and I'd been getting letters signed R. Ostheimer for years. So I cashed it and bought the space heaters I'd been putting off, and I didn't think about him again for about 3 weeks. That's the part I want to say up front. I wasn't looking for anything. Nobody goes looking for this. So, okay, October of 2022. I run a body shop in Jackson, Missouri, little town. You go through Cape and keep going. Pruitt Collision. It's mine. 14 years. I bought it off the guy I came up under, Denny, when his back gave out. 2 bays, a paint booth I keep held together with prayer, and me and one other tech named Marcus, who's better than me at the metalwork and worse than me at everything else, including showing up. It's a thin operation. I want you to understand that, because the money's going to matter to how I acted. And I'd rather you hear it from me now than think less of me later. What happened first was my own truck got hit. My shop truck, a 15 F250. Somebody backed into it in the Rhodes gas station lot while it was parked, caved in the whole quarter panel. No note. But I've got commercial coverage through Meridian Mutual, uninsured motorist deal when they run off like that, so I filed it. Photos, estimate, the whole thing. I did the estimate myself, which I'm allowed to, and I padded it. Not crazy. Maybe 400 over what the parts and labor'd actually run me. Everybody does it. You build in a cushion because they're gonna lowball you back down anyway. That's just how the dance goes. Except this time, there was no dance. I filed it on a Tuesday. The approval came back Thursday. 2 days. And I sat in the office with the mail in my hand, and my first thought was just, huh, because that doesn't happen. A commercial claim with a hit-and-run flag on it sits 3-4 weeks minimum. They send an inspector. They call and ask you the same questions the form already asked. Somebody usually kicks it back at least once to make you refile a photo. That's the job. That's them protecting their money. But there it was. Approved. And not just approved. They gave me the full number. My padded number. The 400 over. They paid the cushion. I remember I laughed out loud by myself. Compressor going in the back. Because you don't look a gift like that in the mouth. I'd had a rough couple months, and it felt like the one time the machine bounced my way. The letter was normal. Meridian letterhead. The little blue triangle logo. Approved for the amount listed. Payment in 5 to 7 business days. And down at the bottom, adjuster of record. R. Ostheimer. And the signature. This tight little scrawl I'd seen 100 times over the years. Ray. I didn't even think of him as a person. He was a name at the bottom of paper. You deal with Meridian long enough, and the adjusters are like weather. They cycle through, you never meet them, they're a voice on the phone maybe once, and then a signature after that. So I cashed it, bought the heaters, paid Marcus what I owed him, and there was a stretch through November where I honestly forgot the whole thing happened. Here's a normal thing, if you want one. Kayla came by. My daughter, she's 19, over to the university in Cape, and she doesn't come around a ton, which is on me more than her. So when she does, it's a big deal, and I try not to make it a big deal out loud, because that scares her off. She came by on a Saturday, and we drove out to the Dairy Queen on 61, and I got a dip cone, and she made fun of me for getting a dip cone in 40-degree weather. And she was into it that day, talking, which she isn't always, telling me about her classes and this professor she likes and how she wanted to switch her minor. And I just drove and listened and said, uh-huh, in the spots, and tried not to grin too big, because grinning too big makes her clam up. She needed money for books, is what it came around to, 400 and something for the spring, and she hated asking, I could tell. She did that thing where she asks sideways, mentions it like it's nothing. And I said, don't worry about it. I got it. And I meant it. And I had it because of the truck money, though I didn't say that. That's the whole memory. Dip cone, books, my kid talking for once. But I hold on to it because it was the last completely normal day before, and you don't know those days are the last ones while you're in them. You just get a dip cone and let your kid laugh at you. Anyway, the adjuster who approved my truck claim died in 2019. I didn't know that yet when the check cleared. What I knew was that the letter said R. Ostheimer, and I'd been getting letters signed R. Ostheimer for years. So I cashed it and bought the space heaters I'd been putting off, and I didn't think about him again for about 3 weeks. That's the part I want to say up front. I wasn't looking for anything. Nobody goes looking for this. So, okay, October of 2022. I run a body shop in Jackson, Missouri, little town. You go through Cape and keep going. Pruitt Collision. It's mine. 14 years. I bought it off the guy I came up under, Denny, when his back gave out. 2 bays, a paint booth I keep held together with prayer, and me and one other tech named Marcus, who's better than me at the metalwork and worse than me at everything else, including showing up. It's a thin operation. I want you to understand that, because the money's going to matter to how I acted. And I'd rather you hear it from me now than think less of me later. What happened first was my own truck got hit. My shop truck, a 15 F250. Somebody backed into it in the Rhodes gas station lot while it was parked, caved in the whole quarter panel. No note. But I've got commercial coverage through Meridian Mutual, uninsured motorist deal when they run off like that, so I filed it. Photos, estimate, the whole thing. I did the estimate myself, which I'm allowed to, and I padded it. Not crazy. Maybe 400 over what the parts and labor'd actually run me. Everybody does it. You build in a cushion because they're gonna lowball you back down anyway. That's just how the dance goes. Except this time, there was no dance. I filed it on a Tuesday. The approval came back Thursday. 2 days. And I sat in the office with the mail in my hand, and my first thought was just, huh, because that doesn't happen. A commercial claim with a hit-and-run flag on it sits 3-4 weeks minimum. They send an inspector. They call and ask you the same questions the form already asked. Somebody usually kicks it back at least once to make you refile a photo. That's the job. That's them protecting their money. But there it was. Approved. And not just approved. They gave me the full number. My padded number. The 400 over. They paid the cushion. I remember I laughed out loud by myself. Compressor going in the back. Because you don't look a gift like that in the mouth. I'd had a rough couple months, and it felt like the one time the machine bounced my way. The letter was normal. Meridian letterhead. The little blue triangle logo. Approved for the amount listed. Payment in 5 to 7 business days. And down at the bottom, adjuster of record. R. Ostheimer. And the signature. This tight little scrawl I'd seen 100 times over the years. Ray. I didn't even think of him as a person. He was a name at the bottom of paper. You deal with Meridian long enough, and the adjusters are like weather. They cycle through, you never meet them, they're a voice on the phone maybe once, and then a signature after that. So I cashed it, bought the heaters, paid Marcus what I owed him, and there was a stretch through November where I honestly forgot the whole thing happened. Here's a normal thing, if you want one. Kayla came by. My daughter, she's 19, over to the university in Cape, and she doesn't come around a ton, which is on me more than her. So when she does, it's a big deal, and I try not to make it a big deal out loud, because that scares her off. She came by on a Saturday, and we drove out to the Dairy Queen on 61, and I got a dip cone, and she made fun of me, for getting a dip cone in 40-degree weather. And she was into it that day, talking, which she isn't always, telling me about her classes and this professor she likes and how she wanted to switch her minor. And I just drove and listened and said, uh-huh, in the spots, and tried not to grin too big, because grinning too big makes her clam up. She needed money for books, is what it came around to, 400 and something for the spring, and she hated asking, I could tell. She did that thing where she asks sideways, mentions it like it's nothing, and I said, don't worry about it. I got it, and I meant it, and I had it because of the truck money, though I didn't say that. That's the whole memory. Dip cone, books, my kid talking for once. But I hold on to it, because it was the last completely normal day before, and you don't know those days are the last ones while you're in them. You just get a dip cone and let your kid laugh at you. Anyway, the thing that started it was so small, it's embarrassing. I needed to reach Ray. The paperwork had my deductible listed wrong, credited back to me, and I was pretty sure that was an error in my favor. And here's the thing about me, I'll pad an estimate $400, but a paperwork error I'll actually call about, because the padding I can explain, and the error I can't. Don't ask me to make that make sense. It's just where my line is. So I called the number on the letter, the direct extension right under his name. Figured I'd leave a voicemail, something like, hey Ray, think you credited me a deductible I don't have coming. Give me a ring. It rang once, rang twice, and then it did that thing. The triple tone, those 3 rising notes they put in front of a dead number, so your ear knows before the words do. And a recording, flat. A woman's voice, but not a real one, the automated kind. The extension you have dialed is no longer in service. Please contact your claims representative for assistance. Then it just hung up on me. Didn't dump me to a menu, didn't offer me anything. Clicked off. I sat there with the phone still at my ear a second, in the office, listening to nothing. That should have been nothing. Extensions get retired all the time. People leave, numbers roll over. But I'd just gotten a 2-day approval on a flagged claim with the cushion paid, from this same guy, this same week. And now his direct line was 3 notes and a dead click. I cracked my knuckles, which I do, and my next thought was, if there's something screwy with this claim, do they claw the check back? Because I'd already spent a chunk of it. Heaters and Marcus and Kayla's books. That little cold thought is the thing that made me not just let it go. If nothing had been riding on it, I'd have shrugged and never thought about Ray Ostheimer again. Instead, I went and pulled my old files. I keep everything. That's a Denny habit the guy I bought the shop from was a pack rat about paper, and it rubbed off. Filing cabinet in the back, gray dented, bottom drawer sticks, and you've got to lift it while you pull, and it's meridian going back to when I opened. So I'm on the floor with the drawer open, knees on the cold concrete, pulling folders one at a time, and I'm not even organized about it at first, just fanning through looking for old approvals with Ray's name. I found one from 2018, a customer job, a Camry that got worked over by hail. Ray signed that one too. Same tight scrawl, R. Ostheimer. I held that 2018 signature next to the truck letter under the shop light and thought, well, there you go, same guy, been doing my region for years. The extension just got retired when they shuffled offices around. Happens all the time. Case closed. I actually felt better. That's the part that gets me now. That I felt better. I was putting the folders back, had the drawer half shut, and there was one more letter slid down under the divider, the corner sticking up wrong where the drawer had bent it. I almost left it. I want you to know how close I came to just shutting that drawer and going home. My phone buzzed right about then, Marcus, an actual work question about a customer's Silverado. When's it going in? And I looked at it and thumbed it away. Didn't answer, which I felt bad about later. But it's funny, because it was a Silverado that pulled me back into the drawer. The letter under the divider was another approval, mine, from that summer. 2022. A customer Silverado I'd worked in August, signed R. Ostheimer, and clipped to the front, because I clipped the flag notices to the front, was a Meridian internal cover sheet. I'm not technically supposed to get, but sometimes it comes through by mistake. Across the top, in the little status box, one word I'd seen before and never once liked seeing: flagged. The word flagged doesn't mean what people think. It's not an accusation. It means the file got kicked out of the normal lane into the slow lane, the one where a human being's supposed to actually look. A flag can be nothing. Wrong VIN, a photo that didn't upload, an amount that tripped some threshold. Most clear in a week, and you never know they happened. I know all this because I've been on the wrong end of a flag before, and that's the part I need to tell you, and I've been putting it off in the telling the same way I put it off in real life. 2 years back, 2020, I let a car go out of my shop that I knew wasn't right. A frame job, a little Honda that had been in a bad one, and the pull didn't take. The frame was still a hair out, and I knew it. And the owner was a kid who needed his car and couldn't afford it done twice, and I told myself it was close enough. It wasn't. He rear-ended a woman on 55 about 5 weeks later, and the reason the crumple didn't crumple right was the frame, was me. Nobody died. She had whiplash, and he had a totaled Honda, and I had a claim come across my desk with my own shop's name on the repair history. And I sat there and did not say a word. Let it go through as driver error. Kept the money I'd charged him for the bad pull. Never told anybody. Not Kayla, not Marcus, not the woman with the whiplash. That claim got flagged too. That's the thing. My name in the repair history tripped a flag, and I sweated it 2 weeks waiting for somebody to call and ask me why a car I'd repaired failed the way it did. Nobody ever called. It just cleared. I told myself I got lucky, so when I saw flagged on that Silverado letter on the floor of my shop, the first thing I felt was that old 2020 sweat coming up my neck. But here's what didn't add up. The Silverado letter was approved. Flagged and approved. Fast. Paid in full. Signed by Ray. A flag's supposed to slow a claim down. Mine had sped up. I put the whole drawer up on the workbench and went through every Meridian letter I had, mine and customers, for about 2 hours. Sorted them into piles on the bench like I was playing solitaire, compressor kicking on and off behind me. It got dark outside and I didn't turn on more than the one light. And I started keeping a tally on a fender cover scrap with a paint pen because the pattern was doing something and I wanted to see it wrote down. Over 14 years, the adjuster names are all over the place. They rotate. Halverson, some guy named Pratt, a woman named Ruiz for a while around 2016. On and on. Most claims, the regular ones, they've got whoever. But every single claim in that drawer that had a flag cover sheet, I found 4, counting my truck and counting the 2020 frame job. Everyone was signed R. Ostheimer. 4 for 4. The flagged ones all went to Ray, and Ray always said yes, fast, full amount. There was one that fought me, and I'll be honest about it, because it's the one that turned my stomach the most. A 2021 file, a customer's van, and the cover sheet was flagged, and the top of the letter had a different name on it. Pratt. And for a second I thought, okay, there it is. The pattern breaks. Flagged files don't all go to Ray. And I felt that relief again. The same cheap relief. Then I actually read down the page. Pratt had opened it. Sure. But down at the bottom, adjuster of record on the disposition, the one who actually signed it, approved Ostheimer. Pratt started it, and it got handed off, and Ray finished it, same as all of them. So it wasn't 4. Once I looked right, it was 5. And the one that looked like an exception was just an exception that hadn't been read all the way to the bottom. I want to be fair to who I was that night. I did not think anything was wrong with the system. My actual thought was the opposite. My thought was, Ray Ostheimer likes me. I built a whole little story where Ray was some grizzled old adjuster who'd figured out a shop with 14 years and a decent record wasn't worth the fight, and just cleared my stuff, waved the hard ones through. God help me, I felt grateful to him. Thought I ought to shake the guy's hand sometime, buy him a beer. That's the flaw right there, working. 5 pieces of paper telling me the same thing over and over, and I read all 5 as good news, because good news was what I needed, and bad news would have cost me. The radio was on that night, classic rock station out of Cape, and they played that Boston song, More Than a Feeling, and I realized I'd been humming it without noticing, and laughed at myself. Stupid detail, nothing to do with anything. But that song stuck to this whole memory now. Can't hear it without seeing that gray drawer and the piles on the bench. Monday, I emailed the general claims line about the deductible and added 1 casual line at the bottom. Also, can you give me a direct line for R. Ostheimer, the extension on my letters out of service? Not a big deal. I even typed, not a big deal, which, looking at it now. The reply came the next day from somebody named Teresa. She sorted the deductible in 2 sentences, said it was an adjustment on their end, a credit I didn't need to do anything about, would show on my next statement. That part I believed. It was the kind of dull, true thing that reads true. And then the last line, about Ray. I'm not able to connect you with that adjuster. Is there something specific about your claim I can help with? I read that 4 times. Not able to. Not, he's out. Not, he's no longer with us. Not, let me transfer you. Not able to connect you with that adjuster. And then that little redirect, steering me off the name and back onto the paperwork, quick. The way you'd steer a kid away from a thing on the ground. My first read still wasn't fear. It was, oh, Ray's in trouble. Got a complaint on him. HR said, don't put anybody in touch with him. So I wrote back, light, real friendly. No worries at all. I was just going to thank him for turning my stuff around so quick. He's done right by my shop for years. Hit send. And then nothing. Teresa didn't answer that one. Not that day, not the next. A day and a half later, I got an automated survey. How did we do? Rate your recent support experience, which is what they send when a ticket closes. She'd closed me out. Didn't even type a goodbye. Just filed the ticket shut and let the robot say the last word. That's when the money thought and the wrong thought finally touched. And I didn't like the spark. If Ray was just some guy in trouble, why'd the whole thread go dead the second I said I wanted to thank him? You don't clam up over a thank you. You clam up over a question. I told myself I'd let it lie. Said it out loud in the truck. Let it lie, Dale. Like hearing my own voice would make it stick. It didn't stick, or there's no story. But it wasn't me being brave that broke it. It was Marcus. We were pulling a bumper cover a couple days later, and he was complaining about his own car insurance going up, rate hike for nothing, and he goes, my uncle did claims for 30 years. He says half the job is just deciding whose file to actually read. The rest just rides through on the software. I stood up too fast and cracked my head on the lift arm, and Marcus laughed at me, called me an idiot. Friendly. But that line stuck in me under the goose egg, deciding whose file to actually read. That night I typed Raymond Ostheimer Meridian Mutual into my phone, sitting on the couch, TV on mute. Some ballgame nobody cared about. Don't know what I expected. A face to put to the scrawl. Maybe a LinkedIn. Some guy in a golf shirt. What came up second was an obituary. Raymond A. Ostheimer, 61, of Perryville. That's a real town. 20-some miles from me. I've driven through it 100 times. Passed away. February of 2019. Beloved husband of 31 years and 31 years at Meridian Mutual, too, where he worked as a claims adjuster. Survived by the whole list. Donations to the Perryville Optimist Club in lieu of flowers. 31 years at Meridian. Same company, right region. There was no confusing this with somebody else. He died February 2019. My truck letter was dated 3 weeks before I was sitting there reading this. He signed my truck claim 3 years and 8 months after his own funeral. Now here's a part I'm not proud of, but it's the truest thing about how a scared mind works. For about 10 minutes, I honestly thought I'd mixed up 2 adjusters with the same last name. I got up off the couch, went and got the 2018 folder out of my work bag, and I built the whole thing. Standing in the kitchen, there's 2 Ostheimers. The old one, Raymond, who died, and a kid, a son maybe, R. Ostheimer, initials the same. Took the old man's spot when he passed. Families do that all the time. Kid follows the dad into the company. I even nodded to myself. Got a beer out of the fridge because I'd solved it, cracked it open. The whole thing had a boring answer, and the answer was 2 guys named Ostheimer and no ghost anywhere. Felt the shoulders come down. Then I put the 2018 signature next to the truck signature on the counter, and next to both of them, I pulled up the photo on the obituary page, because the funeral home had put up a picture of the memorial card, and somebody'd reproduced his actual signature on it, printed it from some old document. The way they do, Raymond Ostheimer in his own hand, under his own dates. Same hand, same slant, same way the R crushed into the O, like he never picked the pen up between them. Same little tail on the end that stopped short like the pen ran dry. You can't fake a signature that identical across 4 years and 3 documents. And a son doesn't inherit his dad's exact hand. Nobody does. Your hand is your hand. There was no second Ostheimer. I put the beer down and didn't finish it. It's probably still in that fridge, gone flat. Let me walk that back, because I keep smoothing it out when I tell it, making it one clean moment under the light. It wasn't. I looked and decided it was the same hand, and then decided I couldn't really tell. What do I know about handwriting? I fix trucks. And I went and got a magnifying loupe I use for paint chips, and looked closer, and it looked more the same. And then I told myself the loupe was making me see things, and I went back and forth like that most of the night, sitting at the counter, picking it up and putting it down. The 10 minutes of 2 guys was the last time I felt okay. After that broke, it was just me at the counter until real late, not able to make it be 2 men, no matter how bad I wanted it to be. 2 men. The next morning I did the thing I should have done from the start. Called Meridian and did not ask about Ray by name. I'd learned that much from Teresa. Called the main line and played dumb. Said I was a body shop. Worked with them a lot. And I wanted to understand how flagged claims get handled so I could set my customers' expectations on timing, which is a completely normal thing for a shop to ask. Shops ask that. The woman I got was younger sounding and actually helpful, not reading off a card. She started walking me through the review queue, how a flag pulls a file out of auto-processing so it can get a manual look, how long that usually takes. And I let her go. That's helpful. And then I asked it real casual, like it just occurred to me, so who actually signs off on those? Is that an assigned person, or does it just rotate around whoever's working that day? And she said the thing I've thought about every single day since. For your region, a lot of that got consolidated back in 2019, when they closed the Perryville and Cape offices into the regional hub. So the flag queue down there kind of runs itself now. It carries the assigned adjuster of record forward and clears them out the far end. Honestly, I'm not even sure anybody down there still touches those by hand. Carries the assigned adjuster of record forward. I said, real quiet, real easy, huh? So who's that? Who's the adjuster of record for down here? And I heard her typing. Little pause. And she said, Ostheimer, R. And then she said, huh. Just exactly like I'd said, huh, over my mail 3 weeks before. That same little noise a person makes when the screen shows them something that doesn't sit right. And she said, that account's real old. That's gotta be a legacy. Hang on, let me. And then the typing stopped. Just stopped. And when she came back, her whole voice had changed. Gone careful. Teresa, careful. Is there something specific on one of your claims I can look into for you today? Steered me right back onto the paperwork. Same exact move. And I understood, hearing it happen live in real time, that she'd just seen something on her screen she wasn't going to talk about. And here's the thing, it wasn't a person deciding to lie to me. It was a note, a little flag on her own screen, some box that said, don't get into this account with the caller, escalate only. Whatever it said, and she read it, and she followed it. Same as I'd followed the note in my own head that said, let it lie. Same as I'd followed the one in 2020 that said, don't say a word. Nobody standing over her shoulder making her do it. Just a step in the process, telling her to look away, and her looking away. Because looking away was what the screen told her to do, and it's easier to do what the screen says. That's the closest I can get you to what this actually is. There's no Ray. When they closed those 2 offices in 2019, the flag queue still had a step built into it that expected a name at the bottom. A real adjuster, a human, to look at the hard files and decide yes or no. Nobody ever built the step that clears the old name out when the man's gone. So the queue just keeps reaching back for the last name that ever worked those files. His. Stamps it on the exact claims that were supposed to get a human being's eyes, and marks them approved, because approved is the path of least resistance through the software, and there's nobody left standing at the far end to say otherwise. And take Ray out of it completely, and it doesn't get one bit better. That's the thing that scared me, standing in my kitchen with the phone still warm in my hand. If it wasn't his name, it'd be whoever the last one was. Pratt, Ruiz, doesn't matter. The machine doesn't need a ghost. It'll make one out of whoever's handy, whoever signed last before the lights went out. And everybody in the chain sees a valid adjuster name on a closed file and figures somebody above them looked at it. Nobody looked. The looking is the whole thing that got automated away, and the name of the last man who ever actually looked is just what got left holding the pen. I hung up. Marcus was in the office by then, and he asked who that was, and I said wrong number, which made no sense because I'd obviously dialed out, and he gave me a look, but let it go. Because here's the thing I hadn't let myself land on yet, and it landed right then. Those flagged files the dead name keeps clearing flagged. The whole reason they got pulled out in the first place. And one of those files, the 2021, was the frame job. The kid on 55, the woman with the whiplash. The machine hadn't just been paying me, it had been burying me. My worst 2 weeks of my life, sweating, waiting for the call, for somebody to ask me why a car I'd fixed, folded up wrong. Nobody ever called, because there was no somebody. A dead man cleared the one file that could have ended my whole life, and I spent 2 years thinking I'd gotten away with it clean, thinking I'd sweated out a fair fight, and won. I didn't win anything. There was no fight. There was nobody in the ring. I sat with that a while. Days. I want to tell you I did something with it. Made a decision. The kind where you feel like a man afterward. But before the decision, I did one more thing. One last check. Because part of me was still hunting for the door out. I got to thinking, okay, every flagged file's got Ray on it. Fine. But the regular ones, the unflagged ones, those rotate. Those had real people. Halverson, Pratt, Ruiz, I'd seen their names. So maybe most of what I'd cached over 14 years was real. Signed by somebody breathing. And it was just the hard files that fell to the dead man. That'd be something. That'd let me keep believing most of my life's work got looked at by a person. So I went back to the drawer one more night, and I pulled the unflagged ones, the ordinary approvals, and I started checking dates against the names. And it held up fine going back Ruiz in 16, Pratt here and there, a woman named Coyle for a bit. Real rotation, right up until 2019. And then after early 2019, the closer I got to now, the more the rotation just quietly dried up. Not all at once, but by 2021, 2022, even the boring, unflagged approvals in my region, the plain ones, more and more of them were coming back Ostheimer, R, because once the offices closed and the people scattered, the queue reached for the same last name for everything, not just the flags. Which meant I couldn't even draw the line I wanted to draw. I couldn't say these ones were real, and those ones weren't. Somewhere in the last 3 years, the whole thing had slid over to him, a little at a time, and I had no way of knowing which check was the last one a living person ever signed. Could have been years ago. Could have been every one since was a ghost. I sat on the floor with 14 years of my own paid work fanned out around me, and I could not tell you which of it a human being had ever actually said yes to. So here's where I landed, and I need you to see all 3 roads were bad, because people always want to tell me there was an easy one and there wasn't. I could give the money back and report it. And the second I did, the frame job comes out. Because you can't hand somebody proof your bad files got buried without handing them the bad file. They'd pull the 2020 job, see my name on a frame that failed, and I'd lose my license and my shop. And there'd be a woman with an old whiplash claim and a lawyer, and Kayla'd find out her dad let a kid drive off in a car he knew was wrong. Or I keep quiet and keep cashing checks. Nothing changes. Except I'd know. Every payment for the rest of my working life would be the same rot, and I'd never again feel that clean little bump of relief when an approval came through the slot. Or I report it clean, anonymous, keep myself out of it. I thought that was the high road for about a day, until I followed it all the way out. Because if the state froze that queue to fix it, they don't just freeze mine. Every small shop down here with a claim in that lane gets held up for weeks, months maybe, while some auditor picks through it. And some of those shops are clean. Guys I know, worse off than me, hanging on by less. I'd be dropping a bomb on a dozen people who never padded a nickel to fix a machine that, honest to God, I couldn't point to hurting anybody. It was paying people. That's the sick part. The broken thing wasn't stealing money. It was paying it out. Every door had somebody getting hurt on the other side of it, and one of the somebodies was always me. I know what the clean answer is. People I've told pieces of this to say it real fast, before I've even finished. You report it. You do the right thing and take your medicine. And they're right. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're wrong. Here's how it actually went, though. The deciding. Because I owe you the real version, and not the version where I agonize nobly and then do the brave thing. A check came, about a week after the floor full of folders night. Real claim. The Buick I'll tell you about. A straight estimate, no padding, and the check came in the mail like they all do. and I stood at the counter in the office with it in my hand, and I looked at the bottom of the letter first, before the amount, which I'd never once done in 14 years, and it said, R. Ostheimer, and I already knew it would, and I didn't move for a while. I want that on the record. I stood there long enough that the compressor cycled twice. I had it in one hand and my truck keys in the other, because the bank closes at 5, and it was 1:45. And I thought about just setting it in the drawer and driving to the state insurance office in the morning with the whole gray drawer in the passenger seat and laying it all out on somebody's desk, frame job and all, and letting it land where it lands. I could see it. I could see Kayla's face in it, which is the part I kept flinching off of. I stood there, and I actually said, out loud to nobody, "You could just not." Then I got in the truck. I want to be honest about how small it was, the doing of it. It wasn't dramatic. I drove to the Alliance branch on Main with the check on the passenger seat face down. I don't know why face down. And I sat in the lot for a minute with the engine ticking. And then I flipped it over and I signed the back of it. My own hand. And I noticed I couldn't not notice, after everything the way my own signature runs, the D crushing into the P, Dale Pruitt. Tight. A little tail at the end, where I pick up too quick. My hand's as much a habit as his was. Somebody could carry mine forward too someday, and I'd never know. I signed it anyway, endorsed it, wrote my account number under it the way you do, and I got out and I walked it in. There was a line. Of course there was a line. Friday afternoon. I stood in it behind a lady with a coin bag and a guy in Carhartts, and I had every second of that line to turn around, and I've thought about that line a lot, because a braver man walks out of it. I didn't walk out of it. I got to the window, and there's a girl there, young, Ashley on her name tag, and she says, "How are you doing today?" And I said, "Good, doing good." And I slid the check and the deposit slip across the counter under the glass, and that was it. That was the whole irreversible thing. A slide across a counter. She ran it, she stamped it. She said, "Do you want any cash back?" And I said no. And she printed the little receipt and slid it back and said, "Have a good weekend." And I said, "You too." And I stood there another second, and I waited for it. The bump. The little clean lift I used to get when a check went through, back when a yes was just a yes. It didn't come. I waited for it in the lobby like an idiot, receipt in my hand, and there was just nothing. A flat nothing. The AC blowing and a pen on a chain, and a girl already saying next. I'd cashed 1,000 checks in my life, and every one of them felt at least a little like getting paid. Like somebody looked at what I did with my hands and said, "Good. That's worth something." This one felt like taking money off a table nobody was sitting at. I walked back out to the truck, and I sat there, and I didn't start it for a while. My hands were doing the knuckle thing on their own, one and then the next, all the way down. That's the moment I gave it up. Not in a courthouse, in a bank lobby on a Friday, over a receipt, no relief on the other side of it. I kept the money. That's the truth, and I'm not going to dress it up. And I keep keeping it. The checks still come, and I still cash them, and it's never once felt like anything since. I told myself all the things on the drive home. That reporting it wouldn't bring the machine's soul back, wouldn't unbury the frame job, wouldn't do a thing, but hurt me and guys like me. That the system was Meridian's to fix, and they clearly didn't want it fixed because fixing it costs them the cheap automation. All of that's even true, mostly. And none of it's why I did it. I did it because being right would have cost me everything I have, and I am exactly the man I've always been, the one who spots the wrong thing and then talks himself out of it, because the wrong thing was paying his bills. The Buick was the one I'd deposited, by the way. Older lady, her car got walloped in the church lot, real hit and run this time, clean job, And I'd done the estimate dead straight. Wasn't padding anything anymore. Hadn't padded a thing since the drawer. And it came back 3 days. Approved. Full. And it wasn't even flagged, which was almost worse, because it meant I couldn't find the line anymore. Couldn't tell which of my approvals had a living person behind them and which the machine just handed to a dead man. Flag or no flag? That's the check I stood in line with. A straight, honest, unflagged claim for a nice old lady, signed by a man who's been in the ground since 2019. And I cashed it. And I couldn't even tell myself it was dirty money, because the work under it was clean. That's what got me. The work was clean, and the yes was hollow, and there was no way to pull them apart. The thing that finished me happened last month. Marcus came in the office while I was standing over the mail, one of the approvals in my hand, and he glanced at it over my shoulder and grinned and said, "Good. They approved it." Just like that. Happy for me. The way I used to be, back before, when a yes was just a yes, and you got to feel it. And I stood there and didn't say anything, because what was I going to tell him? That the yes doesn't mean anybody said it, that nobody's up there. He clapped me on the shoulder and went back out to the bay, and I heard the compressor kick on, and I just stood there holding it. Because now I check the name. Every approval, before the amount, before anything, I look at the bottom for the adjuster. Started doing it without deciding to, the way I crack my knuckles. And what I'm hoping for, every time, is a live name. Somebody I could call. Somebody who looked at my work and said yes on purpose. That's all I want anymore. One yes from somebody who's alive. And here's what it did to me. The final thing. The thing I can't put down. It doesn't matter when it's a live name. Because Teresa was alive. The young woman on the main line was alive. They both had a note on their screen telling them to look away, and they both looked away. And that's a living person doing the exact same thing the dead one does, just with a pulse. So a live signature isn't any cleaner than Ray's. It's just a name that hasn't stopped moving yet. I did honest work my whole life, bad work twice, and I'll carry both till I'm in the ground next to Ray for all I know. But the rest of it, 14 years, I did straight, and I took pride in getting paid clean for it, in somebody on the other end looking at what I built with my hands and deciding it was good. That was the thing I had. That's the thing this took. Not the money. The money's in the bank. Kayla's books are paid. The heaters work. What it took is that I'll never believe a yes again. My shop's open. I'm still here. Kayla got her books. I just check the name first. Every time. Because the one time I stopped checking was the time it mattered most, back in 2020, when I told myself somebody upstairs would catch it if I was wrong. There hasn't been anybody upstairs since 2019. There's just the pen, still moving.